This is Making Better Decisions. I'm your host, Ryan Sullivan. Decisions are where rubber meets the road for organizations. Each week, we'll be learning from people who are on the front lines of turning raw data into better outcomes for their organizations. This show is sponsored by Canopy Analytic, helping companies make better decisions using data. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Making Better Decisions podcast. Today's guest got a bachelor's in IT engineering, a master's of computer science from Northeastern, and is currently working on an MBA at Purdue. Has over 20 years of experience in software development, consulting, and data engineering. He's been a guest lecturer, startup founder, and held multiple board seats. He's also a philanthropist, donating his time and money to help the 24 Foundation, Cradles to Crayons, and SOA International. Please welcome Head of Data and Analytics Engineering for Global Operations at Wayfair, Nachiket Mehta. Welcome to the show, Nachiket.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm going to jump right in. What is the one thing you wish more people knew about using data to make better decisions?
It's a good question. I think the data to make decisions that has multiple steps to go through it. Many times people get in the weeds of identifying, cleaning data, getting it better, bringing insights, but how it affects the business decision at the end of the day, the last mile of the decision making, many times they miss that, or they get caught in just like the weeds in the middle of it. So how you translate the data to insights to making the decision that creates the value for business is very important.
How should they do it?
They should always ask with the question what impact they are trying to make on business. Like if there is a use case, is there a business problem or a customer problem that they are trying to identify? Start with the stakeholders, start with what customers are complaining about, do your user research, and then identify what are the current pain points, identify what they can do differently. Feel free to challenge the status quo, and then make a project out of it. Many times they get funding for the project without knowing like what problem they are trying to solve. Right? The other thing also matters is just sharing the why, the problem statement with the team that is involved in solving the problem. Many times the teams do not know what value they are bringing at the end of the day, right? So that's where they spend a lot of time in trying to solve problem that may be easier to solve at the end of the day if they really knew what they are trying to accomplish.
I'm also, I think, very interested in that last mile. It's a bit like engineering this amazing car and then just not putting any wheels on it. You know, like you can have a really great car and it's just not going to drive with any wheels. So the last mile, for better or for worse, is still human for now. We'll see. You know, but it's a human being interacting with something that someone like you or I builds, making some portion of a decision, and then ultimately going out and taking action on that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of places where technology can break down, but when you start getting to a strategic level, the places where the breakdowns and a lack of return on analytics, it seems to me from my experience that that's where they happen. People either not knowing that they have a report for that, not understanding the report, reading it entirely wrong, not liking the answer that they get, you know, bias, internal politics, consumption, like all of these problems. What is your advice to actually combat the problems that are found in the last mile?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think there are a lot of tactical decisions that are somewhat automated by systems and applications. But when it comes to strategic decisions, right, those you still need human in the loop who is looking at the cross-functional data or reports in front of them and making some intelligent decisions. Obviously, AI feeding tons of data would help there eventually as you build agents, very special purpose, and that's a separate topic. We can get into it. Uh, but the human intelligence that somebody with tons of many years of experience, understanding the domain, understanding that vertical, and then using that experience to say, yes, if I see this KPI is moving a little bit up or down, that's a yellow flag or red flag. And based on my experience, have taken this steps or actions that has resulted in a positive or negative manner. You learn from your mistakes too. And there are many times when that experience helps when you made bad decisions and now you're trying to avoid making bad decisions. But a lot of time that strategic decisions and combining the wealth of the knowledge, the reports in front of you, helps a lot. Systems can help in this, right? To help the human, the executives, to make better decisions when, like you said, they may not be aware of the reports that are out there, or there are reports out there, but they are not matching, right? There are like for our global leader, the KPIs for one region may not have the same definitions of the same KPIs dealt in another region because they have special exclusions and filters applied just based on that region, like North America versus Europe. They have their own rules. So something along those lines, and we face that issue. My main stakeholder, chief operating officer at Wayfair, when he first came in, like that's what we looked at. It we created this whole like KPI council. We looked at all the like a major QBR reports, like just a pyramid. Think about a top-down pyramid in a way where like there is a the board level report. Board cares about certain KPIs at the QBR level, then there are MBR, there are WBR, and then each of his staff kind of goes further down the pyramid. And then we took very strategic initiatives to identify what KPIs matter, why we are measuring them, are we measuring them consistently, what are the definitions, who are the owners of those KPIs, and then each had like a hierarchy involved in it, right? So when you bring the trust in the data, before that there was no trust, right? Like, hey, I know this KPI is showing that my order to delivery is 4 days, but the same KPI is showing on this different report, it's like 4.5 days. Which one should I trust? Right. And then different analysts, they all had access to some data somewhere. Nobody knew what is the source of truth. And then they tried to make their own insights and something that worked in the past for some users and did not for the other users. So we first cleaned all of that from top down perspective just to have the executives trust in the data in a
Mm.
single go-to place to identify that yes, these are the KPIs, it are approved, and there is kind of a grading system we came up with, right? If the KPI definition is uh, confirmed and approved by the owner, you get for one grade. If that source data is coming from the actual domain owner of the data, you get two stars. And if that is coming from the central team who is curating everything and then putting a rubber stamp on it. If there is any issue that goes with it or things, data issues happen, then they are the ones to support it. If it goes through that model, then it's a 3 star. And then the more stars you have, the trust in the data that you're consuming is higher. Right. So that was step one. And then kind of taking it further on now how you can reduce the time to insight and time to decision making, right? Like just executives don't have a lot of time to go through many reports and get the insights they need, right? So what problem, what decisions they are trying to make, and then curate or give those decisions more in terms of the alerts, anomalies, or
Mhm.
insights. Like ideally, so other thing that with AI we have done is like many times people ask they have plain simple English questions, and then there's a whole long loop where you try to ask a plain simple English question. Somebody identifies and runs a query or runs a report that runs a SQL, gets the result, analyze the result, and explain the result in plain English. It's a whole loop, right? So with Gen AI and things like that, you can automate a lot of those steps and kind of give the answer much faster, generate the answer much faster based on a proper semantics of the data and proper consistency, right? At least for the repeatable reports or repeatable questions and anomalies that you want to try and identify, you can automate a lot of those things and then give them a tool in that back pocket to kind of dig into it and analyze it on an ad hoc manner if they want.
When you were talking about the governance, I loved something as simple as just kind of if the definition of the calculation is squared away, that's 1 star. If it comes from, that a simple kind of framework that everybody knows and understands. Whenever somebody brings up like any type of governance, I always like to ask them a follow up question. And just to be clear, I'm not leading the witness at all, right? Like I recognize that like trust and governance are important, but there is a trade off to it. How do you balance the need and the desire to have really clear communication around trust and lineage and definition? Because that stuff all takes time and it takes maintenance. How do you balance that with, whatever the fire of the day is?
Mhm. Yeah. So I think short answer is keep it close to the source of truth and don't try to overcomplicate it and add a lot of additional layers, middle steps here. Uh, what we have done is it's we kind of eventually, like once this was set up, the we tried more federated data governance. We don't have a central data governance team or COE or anything. Like we have established a set of rules and policies and guidelines, um, and each teams are kind of broken into either a data producer or a data consumer, depending on the use case. So
Mhm,
if you have a use case where you need data, okay, identify who is the true data producer is. That could be a software team who owns that application and generating the data in the transaction layer. It could be another team who's getting data from the actual originator and massaging that data or transforming that data so that it is consumable easily for analytics purpose instead of transactional purpose. Or it could be an analyst who is using data from multiple domains and now building some KPIs on top of it or building some AI model on top of it, right? Either ways, depending on your use case, you are either a data producer or a data consumer, and there is a handshake happening between the two parties. Uh, a team like those teams that I mentioned can be a producer or a consumer depending on the use case. But what we did, long story short, is created this whole platform, the data as a product platform and the data contract management platform where two parties decide that they want certain data and there is a identification of the ontology in this that okay, here is the organizational hierarchy, there is a domain, subdomains, and then within subdomains there are a set of data products, and the data products consist of data assets. So data asset is the lowest unit that could be your table or a file or a model or a dashboard or whatever. Each data asset should have a data contract associated to that. And that data contract is actually stored in a Git repo. It is versioned, it is stored. When the data asset is created, it needs to have a data contract, which is essentially a YAML kind of file or a JSON file, however you want to do it. And it has a series of metadata around who owns that data asset, where to reach out to them. So the whole kind of like the data product guidelines they have, like what is the address, addressable, uh, if there is an issue, where to reach out. So their Slack handles, their pager duty information, their escalation. There's a section for all the schema so that you align on a schema definition, the data types and everything, and then any data quality expectation that the consumer have for the producer. So they both have to align on that and establish that data contract. And then this data contract is actually executed behind the scene constantly. So if a data producer, let's say, makes an application change that drops a column or changes a data type or introduce a new list of value that may break that contract, it will, this data contract platform running in the background will immediately catch it before that code is moved to production as part of CI/CD pipeline, and it will identify and alert the producer saying, hey, these are their consumers. So you mentioned lineage. It will show the lineage down to all the consumers, and it will show that here are your consumers who is using this column or this data asset. And if you drop something or if you change something, they will be impacted, and what that will impact will be showing the lineage. So that sort of like trust, like building
Mm.
systematic data contract helps a lot. And likewise, even for consumers, right? If I'm a consumer and I'm looking for a report, right? And I want to identify that, okay, my report, I need data from inventory domain, right? And for example, and then if I look at the lineage and say, okay, this data is coming from like this three potential data producers, the gold standard, silver, and all. And if I know that, oh yeah, this is the owner, this is the ultimate owner who owns the inventory domain or applications around it. And if that is the data producer, I will access that particular data asset or a data product and then establish the data contract with them. And then if I get it from them, then the trust in that data is much higher. I will also tell them that I'm using this data for so and so use case. So they will also know my use case. So next time when they are trying to make any changes, they will reach out to me. Otherwise, what used to happen in our case where the data was available to everyone, and then the producers did not know who all their consumers are,
Mm.
right? And then consumers were impacted. They find out later on when the breaking changes happen. And likewise, consumers did not know whom to trust or what data to trust. Like new people come, new analysts come. There's no standard training around it. So now with this like a standard, the data contract management platform is also integrated around our data catalog, right? So you can go to the data catalog, search for certain things, identify the lineage and the ownership, and now you have more trust in the data when you see where the data is actually coming from and what are the guidelines and quality expectations around the data.
Wow. I think the concept of, hey, let's have a conversation between the stakeholders and the developers and, maybe some PM types, and let's get really clear, like, what's the business use case, what's going to get delivered. That obviously is a pretty standard idea. I think the idea of structuring that and then having programmatic governance is really cool. Like, especially as I'm a big, I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but I love self-weeding gardens. Like,
Mhm.
anytime I can take problems and just, like, make them magically take care of themselves, it's like a moment of, pride and elegance. So, I think that's a very elegant solution. I I'm stuck in between 2 ideas, which I think are flip sides of the same coin and basically me just digging deeper on the same question. So, on the one hand, a huge number of the requests that I've seen come across in my, decade of doing this in industry and in consulting. I guess it's longer than that now. Man, I feel old. Um, but on the one side, the requests many times were like totally half baked. In fact, even that's generous, right? Like some boss is like, I don't know what to do here. Like, go talk to the data people. And then someone's just like, we need this report. And it like doesn't make any sense, doesn't use the proper nomenclature, doesn't specify like any of the requirements or the business case. It's just kind of paper pushing. You also have these kind of classes of requests where it's just like, I'm important and I need an answer now, right? Which, okay, the person may or may not actually be important. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But there's this idea of like, oh, well, this is like a high priority request. We have to like smush this through. We can't do the process. You have those types of requests. And depending on the organization, those are sometimes a high percentage, if not all, of the requests that are getting worked on. Then you have what you described. This is clean, it's documented, it's structured. It fits into automated governance tools. From a cleanliness perspective, it feels like finishing a day of yard work and taking a shower. Like, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, this sounds incredible." But I wonder, is there a trade-off with your ability to do the things that need to actually be done very fast and get results out there? Do you have, like, a separate pathway for things like that, or do you just have those tools gotten so good that you just have that conversation quick? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So initially, right, it wasn't that easy, right? This whole change that I mentioned, it's a big cultural shift
Mm,
than a technology problem solution, right? Technology, like yes, like you were like wowed by that we have automated this and integrated so much and all that. It was like honestly, it was an easy technology problem to solve once you had the owners, the data producers, everyone aligned, the leaders, the consumers aligned to
mm,
this idea of establishing this, right? It took me multiple months and quarters to get this alignment, just
yeah,
like the evangelization of this idea. And I started in my organization with my kind of like power, and then this idea, and then we prove the value just like any MVP that goes in, and now you kind of really solve certain problems, the business problems, attach the value to the business, and then it kicked off, right? Like we the connected with like CTO staff, and they liked the idea, and then like other organizations really like this, and now it is used all across Wayfair, right? So everyone kind of saw the value, and then it happened, but it didn't happen overnight, right? Technology build was an easy one. So it's a big cultural shift to number one. It is also integrated into our planning process, right? So the planning process, so there are two types of the things that you mentioned. One where the ad hoc request, the urgent request keeps coming, and then there is this like well-established data that is available, that has contracts, or you can build contracts and stuff like that. That second pool was smaller when we started, and it kind of kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger, and we are not 100% done yet, right? There is
mm,
always going to be, by the time you feel that you are close to solving it, the business change and the application change and the new data products have evolved, or some reorg happen, and some domain, like you completely reprioritize how you think about your business model, and the domains kind of hierarchy gets some impacted and things like that. So it's a constant improvement process, but we try to minimize that former bucket where by connecting this whole process with the planning, right? We do like twice a year planning process. And then when the planning happens, it's more top down and bottom up OKR like planning. And then any request that comes from the leaders and executives, they need to have a like clear business, like what we are trying to achieve, right? What we are trying to do in the 6 months that will drive Wayfair from 10 billion to 12 billion to more, or save the cost or whatever, right? That real business goal we are trying to achieve. And then how the data and the analytics matter in making those decisions. Uh, in after the pandemic, for example, like saving the returns cost, right? We were very lenient in our policies for returns, and then there were scams happening and things like that. And when our top line stopped growing, not as kind of fast, we diverted our focus for the operational cost saving, right? So when we kind of moved that focus, we wanted to identify, okay, how we are monetizing our returns effort, right? Wherever our inventories is being returned, do we have the proper grading process? Do we have a proper channels, liquidation channels, or open box reselling or whatever? Are we tracking the attribution of all of that, and how much value or dollar we are adding back into our balance sheet because of the returns monetization? We did not have any of the processes. But this platform really helped when we were aligning to that. Okay, we are trying to save $200 million from our operational cost due to the returns. Okay, great. What data do we need to measure that? Okay, great. Here is the data. Who owns that data? If that data comes in, what lineage do we need to offer? And then we started establishing this uh, in the middle of this process. If there is an urgent request comes in, yes, you have this non-contracted ad hoc data sources, your current best alternatives to get your answers, but don't automate those answers and make it a production process.
mm,
So that's what we say. And that is the flow chart we created, right? If you are a consumer, you want the data. follow this flow chart where the data, is it production sensitive? Is it a temporary decision? If it comes, does it exist into this 3-star model approach? If it does not, do you want to make a request to the respective product managers to prioritize it properly and then prioritize it and do it the right way? And if you don't have enough time to do it the right way, do it the scrappy way, but don't productionize it. Wait for it to be the proper productionized, contracted, well-governed machine. Then only that will make a real impact of a completion. Because what happens is you get your answer in a scrappy way, people forget that we have to build this well-governed model, and then nothing gets prioritized because that you moved on, the business moved on. And then
Mm.
you only realize that decisions are bad decision, not in that particular quarter or the cycle, maybe a year, 2 years later on, right? When you say like, why this is not giving me the answer I'm looking for? Because you use the scrappy way to get the answer in the moment itself. So that's kind of like how we have tried to minimize that former bucket to
Mm.
say, okay, if it's ad hoc, if it's a short term, treat it as a short term. A lot of that alignment and negotiation and stakeholder management and upward management is needed to do that. But that, like I said, the cultural change took very long time. And it's not that it's not happening right now. It is, it may be still happening in pockets. We're just trying to minimize that bucket as much as possible.
Yeah. You'd mentioned earlier that you wanted to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. Um, I'm curious, as a fellow kind of data first person, I would say, but obviously you have a background in computer science. You likely understand all the computing concepts and the math and all that stuff, kind of same as I do. But I've chosen to use those skills on slightly more straightforward logical tasks, right? Doing, for I my undergrad was in math, and I am still in contact with some of those people. I was writing an email back and forth with my old research professor, and I was kind of like, yeah, kind of sold out a little bit. Like, like I just add things up and divide them and put them in pretty pictures now. It's not the same as like doing these like, crazy math problems. But I think that the impact um is massive. One of the things that's been interesting is, as AI, machine learning, large language models, all these things have proliferated into non-nerd circles. Um, the market has shifted and responded to that. I think everybody knows, like, oh, okay, well, large language models are good for chatbots. If you have a large number of service requests, you can make a chatbot agent. Okay, cool, got it. Yeah. Where does AI spring out of data? And what are the steps in between?
Yeah, so I don't think AI springs out of data, right? It's as good as the data it is trained with, right? Like any good large language models, like you take GPT or Cloud or Anthropic and others, right? I think they are as good as the data they are trained with. And more data they are trained with, more and better accurate answers they yield at the end of the day. There are other stream of like small language models, right? And very special purpose small language models. But sometimes, like in comparison, the large language models for that same smaller use case it yields better result than the small language models with build very specialty purpose as well. Just because the large language models have trained with much bigger parameters and a lot of data. So I think data is still at the ground, like the heart of it, right? I think where the industry is shifting is though, is in like until now, like you had to do a lot of data cleansing, standardization, curation, transformation to get the good BI or other aspect or intelligence out of it. And you were spending a lot of time, and now you can send a lot of unstructured data and like a multimodal data, and then like the models learn from it much faster.
Mm.
and then they build the regs around it, and then how it all works and all. So I think where it's shifting is there is still definitely some value in having a good structured data that drives some of this training, but data at the end of the day is not gonna be kind of like obsolete. Like, it's like if you are trained with bad data, your model will not perform as good. That's kind of ground. I think what's changing though is how, like you mentioned, like Chat GPT or chatbots or customer service use cases and things like that. I think as customer, right, are you saving, like again, goes back to the business impact and business value, right? Is it implementing some AI models or agents will save or help my customer get their answers faster or their problem solutions faster or conversion better or expand the customer outreach because customer, and there are many such industries where like without this you could not think, right? Like even just think about a simple travel experience or even home shopping experience, right? Any average household person spends numerous hours of research to decide what couch and what wall pieces they want in their home because it's so emotional, so unique, right? It's not the commodity that okay, I have to order bounty and it's there's only one bounty, I like it, and now I just go to Amazon, press an order or put it on a subscription and it will keep delivering, right? This is one time big purchase, and I spent tons of research, the color coding, color combination, and a lot of that research is spent when a lot of data about yourself and what you really like and how you are kind of conversing with that, if you share that data and if you are getting those recommendations much faster, and instead of spending, let's say, 20 hours of research, if I can get my answers and decisions in less than an hour or a few minutes because of that data and personalization or hyper personalization, that's a win, right? I have a lot of time saved. I can do something else with it and I'm still happy at the end of the day as a customer.
Mm.
So agents, like travel agents, like travel is like again travel planning a vacation with family. Many times when you don't know where to go and all like friends going with friends or kids or whatever, right? Like so much that goes into the preparation, right? But if you can create, and this is where agentic AI and building special agents who knows and who can help you make your decisions much faster will take it to a different level. Right? There's other, like you might have read this. I don't know who actually said it. Like they I don't want AI to do my writing and reading and research. I want my AI to do so that I have to do the laundry. I want my AI to do my laundry and other chores so I can focus on what I really like, the passion stuff. And so embodied AI is another field that lot of like effort is happening, right? So I think healthcare AI is another thing, right? So there is a lot of things that you can improve by leveraging the good data still as a foundation and building the right AI agents that actually moves the needle.
Mm.
Uh, Customer service and personalization were an easy no-brainer beginning task, but I think we have a long way to go in terms of what we can achieve with this overall phenomenon.
Well, you've sold me. AI to do my laundry. I'm in.
I don't know if you saw the latest CES conference, but there is a lot of cool tech, international, like many like Asian companies and many companies are really solving some problems, some cool problems. And I see it's like there, like in the next decade, when we talk, like things would be very different.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. If I can indulge myself just a little bit, I feel like, all right, you set up a laundry chute, goes right into the washing machine. We can handle that. From the washing machine, it goes right into the dryer, even one of those all in one fancy things. Cool, we can do that. The folding, man, that's what we got to figure out. How are we gonna automatically be folding my laundry? Thoughts for another day. Whether it's organizational or technical, I feel like any given day, you're out there, you're spinning plates, you're doing whatever your job is. And there are some that are like procedural, you've been doing this for a while. Um, Even if they have like a degree of technical complication, like this is a well-defined thing, I know what to do, execute the plan, yada yada. And I think that there are also a class of things where it's not easy. And that could be, uh, dealing with interpersonal stuff. It could be cutting edge technology. It could be, changes in the market or the technical landscape. And one of the things that we find is our guests and our listeners are not typically very different from one another. And whatever problems you're dealing with, they're likely dealing with too. So hearing what some of those are and more importantly, what you're doing to meet those challenges, I think is something that's really valuable.
That's a good question. I think there are so many problems. I think er, employee retention and upskilling problems, right? Just I think one where how like the market is changing fast, right? How do we upskill our staff? We want everyone wants to build AI or things around AI, but are they skilled enough, right? Like how do they uh, kind of give how are they given right platform and time away from their like day-to-day priorities to skill and then contribute instead of looking for a talent who comes with that experience, right? And the industry has changed quite a lot in last 2 years. So if anyone claims that they have like AI, ML experience, decades of experience, yes, there are few selected people who are truly smart and who have been doing this at a larger enterprise for quite a long time. But otherwise, it's difficult to find the true talented people who have done this in real life. So the best opportunity you can give is upskill your staff, um, set realistic goals, give them enough time, and then create projects. As a leader, what you can do is just identify projects where they can get their hands dirty and build something, right? You can create and work with stakeholders and identify the problems and now try to build it intelligence and kind of like take their skills from the data to AI and see how what problems they are solving while taking along the journey with you. So that's one thing, upskilling and kind of like training your the staff. I think other is there is still a lot of like non-tech people within companies, right? And they they deal with information scarcity, right? There are like we have a lot of warehouse associate, we have a lot of like talent individuals, and there is a lot of tickets and a lot of support issues that we have to deal with, like to our suppliers, to the customers. They're looking for like basic questions to be answered, and they have to wait many days to get their answers, right? Or many hours in some cases. Those are basic problems, right? Everyone is trying to talk about like fancy tech stuff and applications and all that, but how can you get the answers much quicker and faster? The information is right there, right? We historically we have built chatbots and all that. There are more like if there's then that kind of like things, but we can really build like very special purpose agents who can identify and give them so this chat interface just for the enterprise use cases has a lot of opportunities that we can help out with as well. Right? I have questions about my medical plan. Like never like people when they have like new health plans introduced, right? Should I invest in HSA versus PPO and like what is the difference? And it's always like you spend many hours unless you have spent enough. You don't know the good answers and good confidence while making certain decisions, right? So you can help out a lot with the data and then trying to make it personalized, understand individual situation, and then give that individual curated answers much quicker, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
talent related, finance related, psychology, right? There is a lot happening in the world. Am I safe? Like what's happening in the future? Nobody knows, but at least you can help them make a better decisions, or at least give them good enough insights to make better decisions.
Mm. Yeah. I think a lot about that second point that you made quite a bit as far as what is the shortest path to the greatest impact. Um, and many times that could just be something simple. But also many times it's not. many times the shortest path to this massive impact is actually really climbing a mountain. And I like that, but I think the guiding principle that allows us to decide is really around that impact. I wanted to tell a funny story related to what you mentioned with a lot of the AI stuff. Like, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, they've had like, you know, neural nets and stuff since the I don't remember 60s or 70s. I'm not good with dates, but long time.
Mhm.
I remember when I was first getting into the Power BI world. So I use Power BI a lot for visualization for work, and that's I started when I came out with a math degree, and then I went into a finance team.
Mhm.
So I was using a lot of Excel and then row counts. So I started using Power Pivot, and this was Power BI. I think became a thing, was rolled out, but was like pretty half baked in the beginning. However, it had been in GA for, you know, 4 or 5 years. And we would all joke how it was like, like we were very early on the scene using this, being experts, and there were all of these job postings that we would laugh at that were like 10 years of Power BI experience. Wow, wow, they,
Yeah.
it is kind of funny, right? Like there, I think is not just an education and upskilling problem with the actual staff. I also think that there needs to be consideration both at the executive and the HR levels. And this is something which is not easy. Like we don't have the expectation that folks on our executive teams or in, like an HR department or things like that are going to be as technical, if not more technical than the people on our most technical teams. So there's kind of this give and take between like, how do we explain what we really need and what the value is and get them to understand so that you don't just, kind of get that paper pushing behavior and someone ends up asking for 10 years of experience with a tool that's been around for 4 years and thinking that that's okay and nobody caught it.
Yeah.
And not
Maybe.
just once, like, so I think that is also, since we talk about the people side of the things, one of the things that I've seen that, is apropos to your point.
Yeah.
We've had the opportunity now to get to gather quite a bit from your brain
Cool.
outside of the professional world and all the, data and analytics and work. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I've been in this country for little over 20 years now. I've spent half of my life growing up in India. Uh, Here I have made good friends, great, who are like family. Uh, Boston is second home. I came to US to Northeastern. I never left Boston since that. I found my first job after another, always in this, right? So very thankful for that.
Why would you
I
leave?
have
Just the weather.
uh, exactly, right?
Cranky people.
But well, yeah, like you have to love the weather that you are in. Like there is always, I know people who doesn't like too hot, extreme hot, right? And anyway, but to have built good friends and family foundation here. I have two young kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 3.5-year-old son. So they take a lot of my time when I'm not working. I'm always running around, playing with them, or driving, being chauffeur service to take them to their classes and stuff like that. Uh, I'm also finishing my MBA, so some of my time kind of take from there. And I do a lot of reading in general in many subjects. And then I do some trading as well. I wouldn't call myself a trader. I'm more an investor. So I'm always reading about new companies and what's happening, and then talking to friends and looking for some investment opportunities and things like that. Uh, Outside of that, I travel a lot with family and friends, right? So whether it's just like a weekend trip to friends, then hiking or a road trip or going to the city or just making travel plans with friends and family. So next one coming up, we are going on a cruise in April. About 9 families. all together. So that's gonna be fun. But
That's awesome.
yeah,
Hopefully you like them all because you're stuck on a boat with them.
yeah, exactly. You have other options.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, it's fun bunch.
Well, that's quite a bit. I mean, if you had just been like, I work and I have the kids, I'd be like, that's enough. And then you're like, well, we also have the MBA and I'm trading on the side. Yeah. So you've got a full and productive life. I love it. Congrats. That sounds like an awesome life.
Thank you. Yeah, and the lot of time goes in the house maintenance, right? So you're always doing some, like you said, yard work or
If anybody wants to reach out and talk to you more, what's the best place to connect?
LinkedIn. Think feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to answer most of my questions or messages, except obviously the sales calls, and I try to avoid if it's clear, like if there is a win-win or if there, you're looking for some advice and things like that, I'm here. But if you're trying to sell something and that's the whole purpose you're trying to reach out, please don't message. But otherwise, I'm here for network. Let's exchange notes. I don't know everything. I'm always learning and would love to know more about you. Anything that piques your interest and you want to talk further, I'm here. So send me a message on LinkedIn and then we'll get connected.
Yeah. Nachiket, this was such an awesome opportunity to get to speak to you. I can't thank you enough for taking your time and your experience and coming in here and sharing it with me. Thank you so much for coming on the pod.
It was a pleasure. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Ryan, for having me.
I also want to make sure that I thank all of our listeners, especially if you've made it this long. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure that if you liked anything, you tell a friend about us, give us a like, a subscribe, a review, hopefully a good one. 5 stars. Hooray. It really does help get the podcast out there. It helps keep us going. Nachiket, thank you so much again for coming on. This has been another exciting episode of the Making Better Decisions podcast. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap for today's episode of Making Better Decisions. For show notes and more, visit makingbetterdecisions.live. A special thank you to our sponsor, Canopy Analytic. Canopy Analytic is a boutique consultancy focused on business intelligence and data engineering. They help companies make better decisions using data. For more information, visit canopyanalytic.com. There's a better way. Let's find it together and make better decisions. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next week. Peace.